Okay, well, it's right on time. So let's begin. Welcome to the Nutrition and Wellness for Recovery session. I'm Lulu Cook. I'm a counselor, a dietitian, best-selling author, meditation teacher, and I chuckle about this. I teach at a prison, so that's one group of people. I teach at a weekly meditation group, and then I teach sometimes in corporate settings as well, like high-end tech corporate settings. And sometimes I'll be going in the same day. I'll be going from the prison teaching mindfulness to the really la-di-da kind of corporate setting. And the things that the people share with me, sometimes there's not so much difference. We can get imprisoned in our own minds, can't we? Even if we have all the trappings and all the wealth. So that's a little bit about me. We always aim in this section, this meeting, we like to offer actionable skills and strategies to support physical and mental health and well-being in our recovery. I know the people in this room have so many different avenues you're using to support abstinence from drugs of choice or behavioral addictions or just those ingrained dynamics and habits you're having a hard time breaking out of and you need that group support for. So that's gorgeous, and we aim to support that with a bigger picture here about holistic physical and mental health, so that not only are we not doing our thing, I'm not picking up that thing anymore. Such a great start. We can feel even better than that when we pay attention to these kinds of things. So we're going to offer some evidence-based information on whatever the topic of the week is. Today it's healthy aging, how to age well in our recovery. Contrary to what many of us might have thought at 21, if we're sitting here today, most of us did not die before we got to 30. We might have some younger people in the room, and you're welcome. I'm happy to have you here. And kudos to you for paying attention to aging, while it still seems like it's a long way away. But gosh, how many of us never thought we would get there? And yet, here we are. But for the grace of our higher power, here we are looking down the barrel at the next number of years we may have ahead. So we'll talk about healthy aging. I always want to say, as we open it up for a group discussion as well, if you have something really specific or unique to yourself or something really personal, please email me about that. That's Lulu at gutfeelingcoaching.com. I do offer one-on-one consultations, but it would always just start with that conversation about any ideas I might have for you. So if it feels really personal or just really specific, email me, put it in the chat box. But we will have some time at the end of the call for some group questions, group contributions, and hopefully some micro coaching around some of these healthy aging skills we're going to talk about today. So other technical stuff, I'm going to click off the person requesting to share right now because I do a recording of just my part and want to keep it clean, respect your anonymity. So the recording is only of me, and then anytime somebody else is speaking, that's not being recorded. So we'll try to wait and do that part at the end. Welcome to use the chat box as we go along. And so one of the reasons you might use that chat box, or you might email me, Lulu at gutfeelingcoaching.com, is if you'd like the references to the science, the studies that I use to prepare this information. So it's always drawn out of primary literature, primary research going on, and I can offer that to you. But I try not to bore everyone too much with the scientific references unless you're really curious. So our topic today, how to age well. Next week we'll tackle the myths of mindfulness. There are a lot of them out there, and yet mindfulness counts for health. So we're going to dive into that and figure out what might work well for those of us in the rooms, what special considerations there might be, and how to really use that tool. So for today, healthy aging. Just ask yourself for a second, does that sound like an oxymoron to me? When I think of aging, what do I think of? Do I think of somebody frail, difficulty eating, not thinking well, dependent on others? Is that my view of aging? Do I think of a 103-year-old lady running a marathon, living life to the fullest, getting out with her friends? Is that my view of aging? Maybe it's both. Maybe there's a lot in between there. But what is that expectation we have about what our lives will look like in 10 years, 20 years, when we're 90, when we're 100? What does it look like just immediately at the gut level? This is a broad topic, aging. It applies to all of us, if we're lucky. So what I'm offering today is not specific medical information for anyone. It's some general concepts to think about. How can we do this well? How can we get the most out of our recovery going forward, day after day, one day at a time? That adds up to years. What are we doing with it to make sure we feel great a few years down the line? We'll look at how aging happens a little bit today, just to give us that basic context of what's really going on at the scientific level, the medical level. I'll try to keep that accessible. It gets pretty mind-numbing when you really get into it. We'll try to keep it accessible. But what we really want to look at are what are the action steps we can take to support healthy aging for our bodies and for our minds as we get into those years. And so then at the end of this section, we'll have some questions and maybe even some micro coaching around specific healthy habits you'd like to pick up to support that great, gorgeous, glowing aging. I want to just give a quick shout out here. I'm not going to reference these studies later, but a lot of the information I'm pulling on comes from a study in cell metabolism that outlined the 9 hallmarks of aging. That's kind of the context of what's going on that's creating the experience of aging. It's not just magic. It's not just that we're old boots wearing out. There's specific stuff going on. So I'm drawing that out of cell metabolism, and then so much of what we know about what are the habits we can pick up, what are the lifestyle behaviors we engage in for healthy aging. There are a lot of big population level studies looking at that. They're pretty much all complementary in terms of the basic few principles that are super powerful for us to engage in. I drew a lot on a big public health study from the Harvard School of Public Health to do this. 120,000 people followed for 34 years. So we've got this great snapshot of what seems like it works well. So what is aging? Wow. What a crazy question, yeah? What is aging even? In some regards, it could be defined as a loss of integrity of our structures and processes and functions, leading to impaired function, increased vulnerability to aging and sickness and death, as they say in Buddhism. It's considered deterioration and a primary risk factor for other things going wrong. Cancers, diabetes, heart disease, neurocognitive or neurodegenerative diseases. How many of us have that heartbreaking family experience of seeing an elder in our family lose their mental clarity and capacity? It's heartbreaking for them. It could be terrifying for us. In many regards, this is what we've learned aging is. And yet, I'd like to advance that there's another way to look at it. It's that tree in the forest vision. Maybe that tree is really old and the bark doesn't look as smooth as a young sapling over there. But the wisdom, the strength, the years, the insight, the things that have been seen and experienced, and yet still that tree is standing and perhaps offering something different. The height of that tree offers more shade, right? The leaves on that tree offer more of an exchange for oxygen and carbon dioxide. So many gifts come from that old tree that's different than the gifts that come from that young sapling. So we want to look at how do we be a healthy old tree, not one that has cancers and heart disease, if we can help it. Rates of aging are controlled by a few primary factors. It's controlled hugely by genetics. So really looking ahead within your family and seeing how long do my people live for. If you've got that family of origin information, that's a really great clue to what might happen for you. And that can be because of both natural genetic factors and environmental factors that would run in the family. Aging is controlled by biochemical processes. We lose some of the efficiency of how various metabolic pathways and other pathways happen in the body over time. And it's all interconnected. So we can have this system that supports maintaining as much integrity as possible within that system, or we can have a system that has a lot of leaky holes in it and it's making the whole thing worse. So we have a lot of power here. Can't control our genetics, but we can control a lot. We have a lot of power here, and we're going to look at that. We're living longer today as people, as a species. There's a lot of speculation that that may not be the case in the generations to come because of the lifestyle factors we'll look at today. We've had this increasing longevity, increasing lifespans. Some of it because of basic fundamentals like learning about hand washing and germs, right? Some of it is because of just being able to keep people alive longer, whether they're healthy or not. So people are living longer today, but because of lifestyle factors, there's a lively concern that that may not be the case for our children and our grandchildren. And we want to keep making the choices that we can to demonstrate that there's a better way. There is a solution. We do recover. We do age well if we make those choices. Age-related chronic disease can be managed by better lifestyle choices. And let's take a look at where we could have some impact or not. You know, I want to say, looking at the research, looking at the data here, there's almost two different fields of thought looking at the research around aging. One of the ways of thinking about it is very systems level, very patterns level. When we look at a bunch of people who are aging well, what are they doing? We can get some clues there. On the other side, it seems to me, I'm not an aging scientist, I'm not an aging researcher. So I'm stepping outside a little and just looking at the scene. Seems to me like on the other side of that divide, there's this nitty-gritty details of, here's this mechanism. Theoretically, if this enzyme pathway did this, it would do something with aging. And these two it was like never the twain shall meet. So we're going to try to meet them today to look at both what are the specific scientific mechanisms going on, but really what does common sense and the big picture tell us, and where do those overlap? So looking at what cell metabolism considers the 9 hallmarks of aging, the first one is genetic instability, meaning that as we age, we've got our inherited DNA. We all remember this from biology class. You have your DNA that you inherited from your parents, and then your grandparents, and then your great-grandparents. That's what we got given. That's what we came in with. It's the basic instructions for coding the structures and processes that make up our body and brain. But whatever we started with gets impacted throughout life by internal processes considered replication errors. When you start copying DNA, copying, what could go wrong? Any of us who have run a copy machine and tried to make 1,000 copies of a brochure for work, we know that eventually the ink runs out, it starts getting blurry, we start getting these replication errors after enough copies. We also get a lot of inflammation. That cell metabolism and inflammation can relate on each other over time. And so this can start to really impact our genetic expression, our genetic stability. Environmental influences are huge here. That's going to be toxins, internal and external. So external toxins are fairly easy for many of us to understand. That's our exposure to industrial chemicals at one extreme. It's our exposure to the chemicals in household cleaning products at a perhaps less serious but impactful over time extreme. All of these chemicals coming in from the outside, exposure to microplastics coming into our bodies, agriculture chemicals. These things are external toxins that are impacting on us and changing our genetic stability over time. Internal toxins, I hesitated to even say that because it sounds a little bit woo-woo. But if you think about internal toxins, that's going to be stuff going on inside that can increase our inflammation and increase our odds of poorer aging. And that's that stress is probably the number one internal toxin that I would point to. But maybe those of us here on this call, with the experiences we have, We might have experiences of external toxins being some horrible chemical cooked up in a bathtub somewhere that we injected, right? We might have the experience of external toxins being too many cupcakes and all of the sugar and fat in those cupcakes that was actually causing harm internally rather than helping us be healthy and thriving and vibrant. We might have an experience of external toxins being the alcohol that we consumed that is such a caustic substance it causes cancers all up and down our gastrointestinal tract because it's basically burning our GI tract like an acid would, right? We know about external toxins. Those internal toxins we know about in recovery too. It's the stress. It's the unhealthy coping dynamics that keep us cut off from loving connection, right? That is a toxin to our body. Our body actually responds with poor physical health because of those emotional or psychological things. And the science backs this up. So those of us here, we come to this conversation with a lot of experience about what doesn't work. And now we're ready. We're hungry. We're ready in our recovery. We want to feel as good as we can. And so we're going to use all the experience we have and make some changes. Other environmental toxins would include food. It could involve the quality of light that we have coming at us. We're just animals, highly impacted by the environment around us. And in regards to this piece, this hallmark of aging, of genetic instability, I want to give you some reassurance here. Nutrient intake, how you eat, what you eat, hugely supportive and stabilizing for less genetic instability going forward. So from that basic level of genetic instability, we see that the second hallmark of aging is epigenetics. That's how the environment affects our genetic expression. So you might have the experience, you might have seen it with your own kids or with your own siblings, that you have the same genetics. We see this a lot with twin studies. Same genetics, but because of differences, even minute differences in how they're raised and what the environment is, one sibling, one twin expresses a genetic characteristic really strongly and the other one doesn't. That's epigenetics at work. Changes caused by factors that are impacting how DNA and genes express themselves. At a technical wonky level, this refers to methylation and modification of proteins. Blah. It's also the basis of some of the direct-to-consumer tests that are available out there. They're going to test your epigenetic clock to determine your biological age from your actual age. My advice right now is don't buy the tests. You can do that with free online quiz calculators that look at healthy lifestyle factors, and that's just as accurate as a multi-$100 test of your epigenetic clock. Diet, exercise, sleep, all of that directly positively impacts epigenetics. That can all be free. The online calculators can be free. I'll try to remember to post that later. I'll post that on my probably in my profile section here at In the Rooms, but also at my Facebook group, Gut Feeling Nutrition Coaching. I'll post an epigenetic free calculator you can go do. So I'm just making a note to myself about that. So, third hallmark of aging would be telomere shortening. This one's kind of important. It's a little bit geeky and wonky, but it's an important one. Telomere crossing means the end caps of chromosomes found throughout the body. The end caps are the telomeres. They're like the ends on a shoestring, the little plastic ends on a shoestring. And over time, those ends get shorter and shorter and shorter. And then you know what happens to the shoestring. It just degrades and frays, right? That can happen for us with our chromosomes as well. So we want to keep our telomeres, our little end caps, really robust and long if possible. As they shorten, it's a natural part of aging, but when they're shortening too quickly, that is a sign of premature aging. A little bit unclear if it's a cause of premature aging or if other things leading to premature aging are making that happen. However, we have some powerful moves we can make around telomere shortening, including mindfulness and meditation. Those are scientifically demonstrated to prolong they don't make the telomeres longer as far as I understand, but they maintain the length of that telomere longer. Yeah? So next hallmark of aging is a loss of protein stability. Our entire body is made of proteins. Our hair is made of proteins. Our muscles are made of proteins. Our enzymes are made of proteins. Our immune cells are made of proteins. Over time, over 5, 6, 7, 8 decades of life, full, robust life for some of us, yeah? We're out there living hard. Over time, we lose the stability of those proteins that are the structural components. And actually, we want all of that to be working in a really stable and smooth way. The protein integrity is impacted by oxidative stress. That's related to toxins coming in again. Oxidative stress is like rust. It's like internal rust that's happening at the cellular level. And that can weaken the integrity of our proteins. This is related, this particular mechanism is directly related with increased risk of Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, cataracts, eyes. You think about all of the little microstructures that make up an eye. If we're losing the integrity of those proteins, those structures, we lose the integrity of the function of the eye, right? This one I'm reluctant to even say, but I have to say this word just to have done due diligence. Sirtuins. Super, if you're heavy into the neurohacking community, the biohacking community, you're going to hear a lot about sirtuins. These are multi-purpose proteins. They're related to our epigenetics, how we process nutrients. They support healthy glucose balance or sugar balance. And you can go down a wormhole with how technical you want to get on sirtuins. I'm not going to do it here, but I reference them later, so I'm just mentioning them. Regards this loss of protein stability, a couple of the lifestyle factors that are going to help may be time-restricted eating. So we think of that as intermittent fasting. I'll do a whole show on that in a couple of weeks. And calorie restriction, again, whole nother topic. I am not encouraging all of us to go out and start restricting on our diets. There's details there. We'll go into that in a couple of weeks. But intuitively, we might all know that the way many of us just graze and eat to abundance from the time we wake up until the time we knock out at night, 16, 18 hours of just eating, not so great for the body. Our body needs more time to rest and clear out. Next hallmark of aging is called deregulated nutrient sensing. This means, how is your body processing carbohydrates, fats, and proteins? Sugar, fatty acids, proteins. We lose a little bit of our efficiency with that over time. We all know this. Common sense. A 20-year-old can eat what? And still be like healthy and vibrant and energized and at a healthy weight. A 40 or 60 or 80-year-old could eat that same way with really different results. This is this deregulation of how we're responding to different nutrients coming in. And we start seeing really specific metabolic pathways here, mTOR, AMPK. You know, I'm just nodding to these. These are all the detailed explanations for why this stuff matters. But for most of us here, we just need to know the way we process nutrients changes over time. So if we want to optimize our health, we probably need to be thoughtful about what we're choosing to eat, because the right nutrition choices can help regulate and balance these pathways. Next hallmark of aging, mitochondrial dysfunction. Quick, another biology class flashback. Do you guys remember the picture you had to draw of a cell and like all the little organelles in the cell? There would have been a mitochondria in there. Pop quiz. What are the mitochondria for? Okay, I'm cheating. I know this stuff because I study it and I research it all the time. Mitochondria are the powerhouses of the cells. It's where our energy is generated. Okay, with aging, we get some dysfunction in how energy gets generated in the body. That doesn't sound like good news. This is all of our energy for fueling our activities, our processes, our brain functions, all generated in the mitochondria. And the mitochondria are hugely susceptible to inflammation and other health indicators. So we need to be supportive of them. There's there's a lot of buzz out there online about mitochondria, and what I'm going to tell you is still the same lifestyle factors that count for all the rest of it are going to work for mitochondrial health as well. But I can't overemphasize how really important this one is. So, all right, let's move on to the next hallmark of aging. Cellular senescence. Now, I'm a girl who likes alliteration. That sounds really poetic to me. Cellular senescence. It means your cells getting old. It's the process by which cells which used to reproduce in a healthy way. For instance, you could imagine, especially for a younger person, you get a cut on your thumb and it heals quickly. The cells, the structure repair and heal quickly. Or you could have someone, and often this would be somebody much older, who they get that same cut on the thumb. It takes a lot longer to heal because of how the cells that are going to fill in and repair that cut, because of how they're reproducing and replicating. So you want them doing it quickly, but really well. And as we age, the stability of that process starts to fall apart a little bit. It's a normal part of human biology that we have this cellular senescence, this aging of our cells, limiting how well that they're going to replicate and repair damage. But with unhealthy aging, that pace is going to accelerate more, and we want to keep cellular senescence at a dull roar, not at a avalanche level. So it reduces the number when we have more cellular senescence, more cell aging and cell death. It reduces the number of immune cells in our body, which we're seeing right now with the COVID crisis. We're seeing that elders are more susceptible to dying from coronavirus, right? There could be a lot of reasons for that, including pre-existing chronic disease that a young person or an older person could have, but also elders have a weaker immune system. This is part of why. So there's a attendant concern with cellular senescence called immunosenescence. Scientists like yamming a few words together into one really long word, but immunosenescence, it means like the aging and dying of our immune system. So as we get more of these senescent cells, these not quite fully repaired, not quite healthy cells, they release inflammatory chemicals into our body, and inflammation is just a huge, huge hallmark of all of these mechanisms we're talking about going awry. Inflammation. There are natural compounds in a nutrient-rich diet that help stave off that cellular aging. For example, resveratrol, which we're going to talk about because people think often, if you're in this field at all, you might think resveratrol means have a glass of red wine. We have a few other options besides that. So we're going to talk about them. The next hallmark of aging, stem cell loss or stem cell exhaustion. Stem cells are these cells in our body that have the potential to develop into many different types of needed cells. It's a repair system for the body. It's like, I'm going to go to the hardware store and get a roll of tape. I can use that tape to repair tons of different things. I can use the tape to fix a hole in the wall, to hang a door back up, my mother died in the disease of alcoholism, I'll tell you this. She had packing tape holding her microwave up to the wall somehow for the last few years of her life, right? Anyway, besides the trip down memory road, stem cells can become lots of different repair tools in the body, like packing tape or moving tape can be used to repair lots of different things in the house. And as we lose the robustness of our stem cell system, that is one of the central mechanisms for aging. So, thanks for bearing with me. I hope I'm in friendly terrain with some of those painful experiences of how the people in our lives aged maybe not as well as we hope to age ourselves. Next one on this list, impaired intracellular communication, another hallmark of aging. All of our cells stop communicating as efficiently and well together, so that impacts our cognition, how our brain is working. The cells just aren't communicating efficiently. That's bad news. Our immune system, how our mental state impacts our immune system, all of those cellular communications get dysregulated, and it's related very much with inflammation, also called inflammaging. Like that's a little tagline that's out there. I think it's a great one, inflammaging, because the more inflammation we have at the level of all of these systems, the more we're going to be having these aging impacts. Chronic low-grade inflammation accompanies unhealthy aging. Yeah. So one of the places we have some power here, and we're going to look at these action steps in a minute, but one of the places we have some power here is around our gut microbiome, our gut health. That is a place that we can have a profound positive effect on our inflammation. So those are the 9 hallmarks of aging. Those are just a brief and fast overview of the mechanisms that's going on that leads us to be that beautiful, gnarled old tree in the forest. Yeah? Right in this moment, I'm thinking of a couple of dear friends of mine. One of them's in the rooms, one of them's not. They're both around their 80s. I invite you to take a minute to think of somebody you know who's 70, 80, 90, aging well, vibrant spirit, has what you want when you're that age. There is hope. We can age well. Probably not if we're drinking too much, though. So I'm shifting gears here. I do want to be sure that I address some of the myths and truths about how substance use and aging interact. So I think there's a lot of buzz out there about just have a drink, it's good for your heart. The Mediterraneans do it. The French live forever. Not 100% true. What the data actually show is that any amount of alcohol you consume, any amount, increases cancer risk, primarily along the digestive tract from top to bottom. I'll leave that general for you. You can imagine what I mean by bottom. Anyway, any amount of alcohol consumption increases cancer risk. We know that. Perhaps a very small, very moderate amount of alcohol consumption could be good for heart health. The research is actually not as clear on that as it is often marketed as in the headlines of news media that is paid for by alcohol companies who want you to buy their products. So I'll just say, looking at the actual research, perhaps for those of us who could have a very small amount of alcohol, 4 ounces, half a cup, who drinks that much? That's nothing. If you could stick to that and have that, a couple times a week, that might be healthful, might not matter. But for many of us who already know that there's no way in hell we're going to have a half a glass of wine every several days because it's either on or it's off, 100% better for healthy aging and longevity for it to just be 100% off. Heavy drinking, which some of us might be more prone to, heavy drinking is 100% going to lead to more difficulty with osteoporosis, diabetes, high blood pressure, stroke, ulcers, memory loss, some mood disorders. Like, this is all really clear in the research. Nobody's talking about that when they're like, it's 5 o'clock, mommy wine time. Nobody's talking about the fact that when mommy has glass after glass after glass, it's leading down the road to all of these, and that's clear. Here's one that some of us care about. Consuming alcohol leads to dehydration due to how the fluids get processed. The dehydration, relating to aging, the dehydration leads to drier skin and more wrinkles. So if you're hoping to look good at 80, not drinking alcohol is going to be a power move for you all the way through. Excessive consumption of alcohol is related to shrinkage of brain cells. So that leads to certain types of dementias. It also really relates to an actual condition called alcohol-related brain damage. It gets shorthanded to ARBD. pretty catchy. Alcohol-related brain damage happens. That is not going to lead to a clear-minded aging system. Alcohol consumption also weakens the immune system overall. And as we age, on the flip side, maybe we got to our senior citizen years without ever having had a drink. Cool. But just by the fact of being farther along that age continuum, it means that alcohol, it takes longer to break it down with metabolically in the system. It takes longer for the body to detoxify that alcohol. Hangovers are likely to be more hungover, more powerful hangovers with age. And another important thing for many elders to know about people who might be on multiple medications for other health conditions is that alcohol impacts medicine metabolism. So, for instance, if you're taking aspirin for various heart concerns, increasing your alcohol consumption can also increase your risk of internal bleeding. So alcohol and aging are not great friends, actually. Looking more generally at drugs, opiates and aging are a huge, huge concern. Of course, opiates are a huge concern in the States, period. And I say in the States because it's not the case everywhere. Here in Australia, for example, much less. Not to say that there's none, not to say that looking at the prescription of opiates isn't of attention here, but it's not that the systems, the medical prescribing systems are so different in other countries that many of them don't have the same really dire, bleak pictures around opiates and aging. And I want to be sensitive. This is such a hard call. I worked in skilled nursing and aged care for a long time, and I can promise you that there are elders in a lot of pain from various health conditions who are under-medicated. And I remember seeing, I'm thinking of a particular elder at a long-term care facility I worked at, very, very sick, an advanced level of cancer, and yet the family was so concerned about, well, we don't want mom to become an opiate addict. And they wouldn't allow prescription of some of these powerful opiate drugs. And mom died in a lot of pain. So that's ugly, just heartbreaking and brutal. And so I want to acknowledge that when we look at aged communities, there's this balance between the potential for an increased risk of opiate dependence with an increased risk for our loved ones and elders to be in pain that doesn't need to be there with appropriate pain management. And this is personal for all of us. My partner is clear that she will never want an opiate medication. She has that in her various documents, and she's expressed it to me, her advanced directives, no opiate medications for her because of how she prizes her recovery, and that's gorgeous. Me, I'm not so sure. I've worked in aged care. I've seen some of how it can go. I'm like, I don't know, at a certain point, maybe just give me the morphine. Like, this is personal. There's no right or wrong answer, in my opinion. There's no, you have to stay sober day at a time, even if you're freaking 90 years old and dying in excruciating pain. Well, got on my little high horse again. We'll leave that for the comments section. I just want to acknowledge that from a policy perspective, from a laws perspective, this is tough. We want to be compassionate, and we don't want to continue opiate addiction and aging. One recent study of Medicare recipients in 2011. So Medicare recipients, meaning overwhelmingly these are going to be elders. 15% of Medicare recipients who were released from hospital and prescribed just like a basic analgesic, a basic painkiller like Tylenol, aspirin, whatever. 15% of them were also prescribed an opioid to go along with it. And 3 months later, 42% of them were still taking it. So we can see that with some of the chronic health conditions that come with aging, the increased risk and exposure to various pain management practices or prescriptions, there is a high risk for both being prescribed inherently addictive opiates and continuing to take them over time, even if you're taking them according to doctor's orders. So worth really thinking about how could we manage pain differently for all of us and certainly for elders. I'm going to just touch super briefly on medical marijuana. I'm not actually going big into that right now because I think that's a full topic for another show. The number of people 50 and over who report marijuana use in the past year has been increasing steadily from something like 2% in 2002 to 3% in 2008, and it's higher now. I saw different numbers. I'm not going to quote a number. It's higher now. But so the percentage of people 50 and over trying medical marijuana, those numbers are going up. This is surveys from the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration. The biggest rise was in 55 to 59-year-olds. They reported marijuana use more than tripling over that time period, up to 5% for those people in their mid-50s, up to 5% using medical marijuana. These are people who probably could have been exposed to or tried marijuana back in the heyday, back in the summer of love, yeah. So there's a comfort and a familiarity there and thinking maybe this would be worth trying with my chronic health condition. The data are all over the place regarding what medical marijuana might help with and what it might, but I'll tell you what is also all over the place, the marketing and the hype, telling you that medical marijuana will fix your thing. Whatever your problem is, medical marijuana will fix it. I can find you something promising that. So we're going to look into the science more on that because I think it's important to know there's 78 million baby boomers aging, and the expectation is that marijuana use will continue. What are the healthy lifestyle habits that can help create the best case scenario with all of this? A high quality diet, physical activity, not smoking, participating in brain challenging activities like using your brain, use it or lose it. That's a good key for all of this. Physical health, use it or lose it. Brain health, use it or lose it. Emotional health, use it or lose it. If we are in this room today, focused on our recovery at whatever level, we are using our emotional and spiritual health. So diet, movement, not smoking, engaging in brain stimulating activities, stress management activities, including mindfulness, which is pretty huge, and maintaining a healthy body weight in some studies. So adults who have 4 out of 5 of these, and I know I named more than 5. There are so many studies in this arena, and maybe this study looks at these 5 factors, this study looks at these 6 factors. There's so much overlap here, I'm going to talk about them in aggregate. But if we picked any 5 of these studies, or any 5 of these healthy lifestyle habits, adults who have 4 out of 5 of them will have a 60% reduction in their odds of developing Alzheimer's disease. If you've got 2 or 3 out of 5, you've got a 37% reduction of odds compared to people who only have 1 or 2 of those habits. And most of us here in our Western wealthy communities, most of us have maybe 1 or 2 of these healthy lifestyle habits. So I see, yeah, we've got a question coming in and I will hop onto that in a minute. So the thing I want to come back around to as well is that Harvard School of Public Health study on life expectancy showing that 34 years, 120,000 people, they studied a lot of people to come up with this patterns level picture, what works and what doesn't to age well. And what they found was that people who commenced these types of healthy lifestyle behaviors at 50, women would have 14 years of increased healthy life. Men would have 12 years of increased healthy life compared to someone at 50 who did not engage in these healthy lifestyle habits. So let's look a little bit more at what they are. What to do about food. Get rid of processed, refined, inflammatory foods as much as possible. That's diets that are high in sugar, they're high in fat, especially high saturated fat, and they're high in salt. These are inflammatory. They cause inflammation throughout the body and the brain. Neuroinflammation, I've talked about it before. Neuroinflammaging, yeah? We want to get rid of the inflammatory foods. So as much as possible, we're going to turn away from those highly processed, high-fat, high-sugar foods. We all know what those are. They're typically the ones that send off all of our reward centers in our brain. We go, oh, so yummy, want more. Got to look away from those people. That is not our ticket to healthy eating. The higher our blood sugar is from all those kinds of foods, we're going to have higher perceived age. People who run a consistently higher blood sugar level feel older, and their metabolic pathways look older, their inflammation looks older. People who consumed more high glycemic index foods for afternoon tea, if they have a particular a very common genetic alteration called ApoE4 that's related to heart disease risk, if you have that very common genetic picture and you consume a high glycemic index, a high blood sugar snack in the afternoon, that would be like cookies and sweet tea, all right, or heavily sugared coffee, perfectly normal afternoon snack, that will create a 2 to 3 increased risk of Alzheimer's compared to people who don't choose that high blood sugar inducing snack. So if the more we can swap out those high fat, high sugar foods at snacks and meals for nutrient rich, even if it's high carbohydrate, sweet potatoes, whole fruit, nutrient rich, high fiber, healthful foods. Overall, we want to be choosing more whole foods, more plant-based foods, less processed foods. This can be based on Mediterranean and ancestral type dietary patterns. Paleo has some pluses and minuses. Maybe I'll do a whole show on that at some point, but I'm a little scared of wading into the strong opinions there. But going to older dietary patterns that are not based on food that gets made in a factory and put into a plastic nuclear war-proof package, really great start, including more extra virgin olive oil, more green tea, more salmon, more beans, more curcumin, that's turmeric, highly linked with increased longevity and increased healthy longevity, as are cruciferous vegetables. So for those of us out there who are not ashamed to say, I love broccoli, I don't know why broccoli always gets such a bad rap. I just watched the film Up last night. Great movie, supposed to be for kids. I cried my way through it. Broccoli was just so demonized in that film. If you've seen Up, you know what I'm talking about. Cruciferous vegetables like broccoli, cauliflower, cabbage, directly related to longer, healthier lifespans. Paying attention to our gut health counts to reduce this inflammaging. Prebiotic foods, onions, beans, apples, whole grains, these feed the healthy gut bugs that we have. Probiotic foods, fermented foods like yogurt, kimchi, sauerkraut, these actually provide directly healthy microbes into our system. So this then directly reduces inflammaging. Thinking about fasting, reducing the amount of time we spend eating, time-restricted eating, calorie-restricting, intermittent fasting, this seems to have a beneficial impact on multiple metabolic pathways, mTOR, AMPK, I'm talking to you again. And again, we'll do a whole show on that because it's pretty intricate, and I frankly think that there are a lot of risk factors with looking to intermittent fasting for people who, certainly if you are early in sobriety from substances, I think it can have some red flags to know about. And certainly if you have a background of addictive eating, I think there's more to look at. But it's worth looking at because there's potential benefit there. Having a more frequently ketotic diet, a keto diet, or keto cycling, this can help with stem cell renewal. It can help with increased mitochondrial function. What to do about supplements? We got asked that earlier. The question then was around maca, which is more highly hyped than the research is keeping up with. You can find some not really high quality research showing that maca is generally helpful to improve these kinds of markers of aging. And I want to be careful here. This is not to say that maca doesn't work, but it's a natural substance. People are getting rich selling it, but not in the same way as they are if they develop a new chemical substance. So the research to do some really precision level studies on maca, the money for that research, it's not clear to me where that would come from, and therefore we don't have great research on it. The research we have on it thus far looks like, maca might help, probably not hurting anything, but it's not, at this point, it's not a profound crescendo of, wow, this looks really amazing, go do it, go buy it. Not there yet. Maybe in the future. I want to say about any of these supplements, food first, until we're actually getting there with eating more plants, getting those cruciferous vegetables in there, getting rid of some of the highly inflammatory foods. Like, do all that first before going and buying a supplement. If you're good on all that, some of the things to look at that have some really interesting research around them would be NAD and NMN. That's nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide and nicotinamide mononucleotide. These naturally decline in the body with age. They're needed for those sirtuin pathways. I promised I'd come back to sirtuins. We need them. They decline naturally with age. So some intriguing research about pumping those up with some supplements. Quercetin, which we also get from apples, for example. Some interest in using that supplementarily. They can also support the sirtuin pathways. Resveratrol. This is our red wine chemical again. Oh, but red wine, it's so good for you. It has resveratrol. Okay, yeah. So do grapes and blueberries. So go eat a bunch of them. Those are super good for you. Lots of fiber, lots of other nutrients. And you just don't need the red wine to get those benefits. Also interesting research around resveratrol as a supplement. It may mimic some of the impact of calorie restriction or intermittent fasting. So for those of us for whom that kind of dietary regimen doesn't make great sense, using a resveratrol supplement might be helpful. Berberine could also be helpful. What to do with lifestyle, moving off food, quit smoking. We're not sure about vaping yet. I just want to be clear here. There's mixed evidence on vaping. Right now, many of us think it feels intuitive to say, well, vaping's got to be better than smoking cigarettes. I don't think we know that yet. Way better if we can just scale way back or quit both of them. Move your body. The official technical recommendation is avoid sedentarism. Avoid being sedentary. Move your body more often through the day. Even just 20 minutes of a gentle walk has enormous benefits for longevity. So you don't have to go to a gym. You don't have to try to run a marathon and actually die trying. You don't have to do anything crazy. Just 20 minutes of gentle walking a day will be huge for improved physical and mental aging. Decrease your chronic stress. Slow down. Be mindful. Stress is inflammatory. Stress leads to holding higher weights than many of us will be healthiest at through some metabolic effects. So decreasing stress in whatever ways work for you, but specifically mindfulness and meditation, which again, it expands that healthy telomere. Meditation is also directly linked with improved immunity, improved sleep quality, improved neural integration. That's how well our brain is communicating. And remember, that fades over time unless we're counteracting it. It's linked with better attention, better memory. Meditation directly linked with decreased inflammation, decreased chronic pain, decreased stress, decreased markers of cardiovascular damage, decreased hypertension. So all of this points to yes on meditation. That'll be, again, we'll talk about mindfulness myths in a couple of weeks. Cognitive stimulation, use it or lose it. If you love Sudoku, if you love crossword puzzles, if you love reading, these are great things to do with your brain so you keep them strong. Just like if you're not working out, you're not moving your body, you're not using those muscles, they weaken over time. Same with your brain. So, okay, I was so sure I was going to be short and sweet on this one and leave plenty of time for you guys, and I just barely did. But there's a few minutes for you. As a wrap up, big picture of aging, what's actually going on, and what we can do that actually helps. If you are having a hard time making it happen to engage in those healthy lifestyle habits, that's where hiring a coach like me helps, or at least just talking to me. I typically have some resources and ideas I can point you to. So if you have some questions about how this information applies to you or how to make it relevant to you, write to me, lulu@gutfeelingcoaching.com. Get onto my Gut Feeling Nutrition Therapy Facebook page or newsletter. You can do that at my website, Gut Feeling Nutrition Therapy. And also if you just have specific personal questions. Or you want the research from all this. I have a few minutes left for grabbing some of the questions that came in. we're looking at one question. So I got the MACA one for sure. This one is the effects of sugar on mood. Yes, absolutely. Yes, you're not imagining it. Sugar has a huge impact on mood. And like so many of the things we're trying to move away from, the impact feels immediately beneficial and pleasant whilst taking that long-term toll on us. This is so hard when we are new in recovery from dramatically damaging substances. If we just got off methamphetamine or ice and we're using cookies to stay sober today, I don't know. That's a tough call. But as one thought is, we could feel even better, even earlier in our recovery if we really did just go all in and had that healthy diet at the beginning, gave up the cigarettes, gave up the alcohol, gave up the ice, all of that. If we went all in right at the beginning, if we lived in a world where our treatment modalities, our treatment centers could support going all in like that, we would feel better faster and our risk of relapse would go down. I'm staking my claim on that right now. However, if you had to use cookies like a fiend to get through those first few months of recovery, good on you. You made it. You are like 5 months clean and sober. That is so awesome. And now you're ready to look at these other pieces, these other impacts. Detoxing off sugar will not be as bad. Probably. I don't know what your habit was like. It won't be as bad as the alcohol or drugs, but you might be in for a rough ride. You can support it in different ways. Please write to me. I'd be so delighted. I have some blog articles on this. I'd be so delighted to send you some links and some information. So send me an email, lulu@gutfeelingcoaching.com, and I'll send that.